If you know, you know how good that is. For a while now, I've been considering making a temperature blanket. If you're not sure what that is, it is a blanket where you track your high or low temperatures every day for a year, and you make one row of a blanket in order to kind of document what your temperature was from January 1st through December 31st, or really like any time frame, but typically 365 days. Now, I really like this idea. I really like an ongoing project documenting something about your year, but temperature is just not something that I really want to track. It's kind of depressing to see, global warming, things getting warmer and warmer, and red's not my color. I do, however, really like this idea of a project going on throughout the year, that when you're not feeling other projects, you just need that mindful, simple project that you can just work on without really thinking about it. I like the idea of tracking something in a blanket form. So I started thinking about what could I make that instead of tracking temperature, and I was like, I always track my books on Goodreads and try to see how many books I read a year. Why not do something like that into a temperature blanket alternative? I like the idea of having a crochet project throughout the year, and instead of tracking every day, I could just track books. And that way I don't have to do it for every single day. I don't have to have that additional pressure on me in order to get this project done when I want to work on other things. A book, it'll take me a little bit longer to read instead of having to do it every day or trying to play catch up so I don't get super far behind. A book, I just have to choose certain colors and then write down what books I've written, and when I have time, go in, add those rows into the blanket, and I'm tracking those books just fine. Now, I've been kind of hemming and hawing and thinking about it, and it's just been in the back of the mind, but I have recently decided I'm gonna do it. I'm going to figure out how to do a book blanket instead of a temperature blanket and track my books for 2024. And here I was thinking I was so original, and I started looking online. And turns out there are many, many creative people who have come up with the idea of doing a book blanket, tracking books on their own, not on their own, tracking their books as an alternative to a temperature blanket. And so, not nearly as original as I thought, but I still really like the idea. I'm still gonna move forward with it. And I'm in this planning phase. It is it's towards the end of January when I am filming this, and it's something I've been going back and forth on ever since I really got into my first book of the year, 4th year, which, if you know, you know how good that is. And I just want to track it. So I'm like, if I am going to do this project, I need to start thinking it through now, figuring out what I'm going to do, how am I going to make it. If you've looked at temperature blankets, there's 10,000 different things out there. I'm going to try to figure out what works for me and how I want to track the books I read for 2024. So this video is really just about planning. What is my thought process? How am I going about it? What am I going to do for my ongoing year-long project? When I'm looking at details and thinking about what to do, there's a lot of different things going through my mind. I went onto Pinterest in order to find some inspiration from temperature blankets and see what other people have done for those projects. And there's a lot out there. It's a little bit intimidating. I have been thinking, so first I'm like, do I want to do a pattern or do I want to do something a little bit more open so that way I can kind of have freedom on what I do with it? So part of me, the kind of overly ambitious part of me is thinking, what about this pattern, this book pattern? I found this on bracelet book, excuse me. And this is a pattern of pixels that you can make like the shape of a book, and how fun to have a blanket to cozy up with that looks like a book, tracking the books I made from this year. But the challenges with this is, if I was going to do different colors for books, am I going to make the pages different colors? Am I going to make the outside different colors? What happens if I don't read enough books in order to fill the pattern? I could just go into the next year, but all of that just seemed like a little bit too cumbersome to try to figure out and do it in a leisurely way, which is the way I really want to do it. Another idea I had was this cool square pattern where like the size of the square will correspond with the length of the book, and then I could sew them all together or connect them all together at the end in some kind of fun, funky pattern, similar to this example here. But again, if I don't read the right amount of books, if they don't line up just right, it's going to be hard to figure out how to like piece it all together. And again, that's a little bit more stressful than it like. Now with a book pattern, it seems like the stress would come during it and kind of towards the end. With the squares, it would all be at the end, and let's be real, I'm always stressed at the end of the year with holiday plans, gift shopping, things like that, which I do put on myself, but I don't need something else at the end of this calendar year to stress me out. So I'm thinking just stripes right now. Might go back on it, but I'm leaning towards doing some type of striping. That way the pattern can grow organically. It's as long as it is at the end of 2023. I don't have to stress about how pieces fit together. I also don't have to sew as much as with the square one, which least favorite part of any project is sewing. So this is why I'm thinking just stripes for this project. The second thing I want to think about though is what stitch. If I'm going to be doing stripes, what stitch is going to be the best for me in order to, what design do I want? What feel do I want for this blanket? Now, I looked at a chevron stitch and the ripple stitch, and those are just really fun and really cool looking. But is it going to have as fun of effect if I have multiple rows of the same color? I really like the alternating colors and the variety that you get with the chevron and ripple. But if I'm reading a really long book and I have 6-7 rows of one color, that chevron and ripple isn't gonna pop the way that I would like it to. I also considered the waffle stitch, the alpine stitch. There's this cool star stitch and like a lark's foot stitch. There's a lot out there, but I'm thinking right now of just doing the moss stitch. It's simple, it's consistent, it's more than just a single crochet. It gives a little bit more texture and variety, but it's not like overwhelming. I guess the others, overwhelming is too strong of a word. It's simple, and it seems like I'm gonna get my alternative goal of that mindful, relaxed kind of crochet project if I keep it simple with a moss stitch, but it's more to keep me at least engaged enough in this project to want to do it year round, that it's not just going to be like a year of just straight single stitches for who knows how many 300 rows. I don't know what I'm going to get for this project. Depends on my books. I also want to consider what to track. Now there's so many different things to track. I definitely want to track different genres. What genres of books am I reading each year? My common genres, if I'm going to look at my list real fast, I tend to read fantasy, different types of fiction, whether realistic fiction, science fiction. You could also get the magical realism category. There's so many book categories, it's hard to define them. I also read some nonfiction, whether it's memoirs. I also do like self-improvement or parenting books. I also read some books for school, like for my work. which all I probably would just classify under nonfiction. I don't read enough of those to really track what type of nonfiction I'm reading. And then I read mystery. I think those are the categories I'm gonna track. I'm not sure if I'm gonna, part of me was gonna distinguish fantasy between high fantasy, where you're in like this alternate world completely different from life as we know it, versus low fantasy, where it's our world but with fantasy elements. So kind of think another world underneath our what we see every day. That's the way I kind of define low fantasy. I've also seen that as magical realism. I don't know. I like high fantasy, low fantasy, two different shades of the same color maybe. But I also read a lot of young adult, and I'm getting a little bit more into audiobooks. So I'm not sure if I want to track those as well. I have some ideas for that, but I'm going to come back to that in a minute. I think those are the genres I want, and then I need to consider how to track book length, because that is something I'm curious about, to see what is the general length of books that I am reading. Now I'm thinking just keep it simple. Round to the nearest 100, and every row, like every 100 pages is one row of my blanket. I think that would be simple and straightforward. That way a book that's like 620 pages, I'll do 6 rows. A book that's 270 pages, 3 rows. Just round. Keep it simple. I don't need to figure out like 150 to 250 or 100 to 350. That's too complicated. Let's keep it straightforward. 100, 1 row. So I think I'm definitely going to do that for my tracking my book length. But then I have one more consideration. Do I want to track rating on how much I like each of the books? I know it's not going to list out the books on my blanket itself, but do I want to kind of be like, oh my gosh, I love this book, 5 out of 5 stars, and kind of track that in some way? Part of me was thinking I could do different colors, so like a gold, silver, bronze, and kind of categorize or rate books that way. But another part of me is like, what if I put, to kind of separate my books, I'll have one color, and that color can be like, if it's, maybe I'll do 3 stars instead of 5 stars, but 3 rows of that color represents 3 out of 3 stars. Still figuring that out. I want some way to be like, oh my god, this book was amazing, and to see how much I enjoy the books I read throughout the year and how I would rate them. Still figuring out the details of how I want to do that, because Fourth Wing, let's just go with that one because it's so good. That one I want to say would be 6 rows because it's around 600 pages. And for me, it would be 5 out of 5 stars, highly recommend. So suddenly that's 11 rows if I wanted to do 5 stars, 1 star for each row. Is that too much for one book? I don't know. Need to think on that. I am also considering, so kind of going back to the, I don't want to say reading level because that sounds too schooly. I don't like that, but the category of young adult, or the type of book or type of genre. Part of me was thinking of having a different color representing young adult, adult, and audiobook. I know audiobook can be young adult or adult. We also have all those categories of new adult, which lots of colors suddenly if I get that detailed. I was thinking I could have a smaller thread that I just kind of crochet with my main color for the genre. So if I have fantasy being purple, then and white being audiobook, I could crochet, like the audiobook one would be a lot thinner, and I could crochet them together as one like long string. I am just not sure of the logistics of that. So the other idea I had was alternating colors. So I'll have purple I'll still have just 6 rows for a book that's 600 pages. Purple being fantasy, white being adult. And then I'd alternate for those 6 rows, alternating between my genre fantasy and the type or level of adult, young adult. I don't know what I said in this example anymore. I'm rambling, sorry. And just kind of alternate them and then give my rating at the end to separate before another book. Maybe do that, maybe just have one stripe through the color, like the genre, just to signify it, but still have like the genre be the main color. I don't know. So that's kind of what I'm grappling with right now. I'm still kind of early on this. I know it's the end of January. I'm almost done with my second book. So I should really decide these things sooner rather than later, but at least I've got time, because once I get started, it's like I know what I'm going to do for multiple rows because I've already read the books. I've got that documented, and it's easy to go back versus trying to figure out what, like with the temperature blanket, like I was saying, if I was starting now, I'd have to figure out the temperatures for 30 days and who knows how long it's going to take me to get the yarn, and it just seems a lot more manageable to start late with this book project than temperature. The final thing I'm trying to figure out as I'm in this early planning stage is what colors? Colors are not my strength. I have very basic go-to colors that I like to combine. Teal with black. Very simple. They work. I don't know if you could tell with all the color, like we painted our doors different colors. If you go up and down our hallway, each door is a different color. That's for us. I know that's not really a thing, but like we were like, they look good enough together. We're not really like, what has good cohesion? I wanted to try to be a little more planned on this instead of just grabbing I like this color and make sure that the colors I have go together, because it's going to be 8 to 12 different colors. I want to make sure there's some cohesion between them. So to help me do that, I decided to look up different palette ideas. You see this on Instagram sometimes. There's a yarn account I follow on Instagram that gets inspired by nature, and so they pull those colors in that they see from nature shots to make their yarn colors. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. I was like, why can't I do that for my color scheme for this project? So I started looking up nature palettes or nature color palettes, things like that. I was looking at this one on the Rocky Mountains because they are near and dear to my heart. I was going to go with this one because I really liked the natural tones in it, but when I started to look on websites trying to find matching colors, it was just a little too hard for me to tell how well the actual yarn would go and if it would reflect the vision I had. So instead of going with those neutral nature colors, I was like, why don't I go with still that nature feel, but finding something where the colors can be a little bit more vibrant and still work together, whereas like different shades of greens and browns and oranges, like it could look really good or I could really mess it up. So I typed in Northern Lights color palette and so many different options came up. I am really leaning towards this one. This one has a lot of really deep colors, or these fun color contrasts, but then there's also some of different shades of like these teal, these blues, and these purples. So we get different shades in there, but then some pops of brighter colors like that green. So this is kind of what I am leaning towards. I need to finalize some things, obviously, in order to make it a reality and make it happen. But this is where I'm at right now. I'll do another update video probably a month from now just to kind of show you what I decided on and how far I've gotten. Keep me accountable, cross my fingers, I'll have gotten somewhere. But that way these videos kind of can keep me accountable. You guys can give me tips for anything that you think I should do, try, adjust. Kind of on that vein, please give me any advice for this project. The ideas I gave out of tracking, book length, reading level, ratings, please give me some feedback on that. Help me kind of figure out what route I want to go. What do you think would look best in a simple row crochet blanket? But I'm feeling pretty good. I think this has a lot of potential, and I am excited to see where it goes. Hoping a year-long project turns out well. Kind of diving in with both feet and winging it and hoping for the best.